Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Leibowitz, and with us today is a British Israeli living in the town of Tsur Hadassah, right next to the Green Line. For the last decade, he's co-led an Israeli-Palestinian coexistence project, which has proven to be exceptionally robust and received the 2021 IIE Victor Goldberg Prize for Peace in the Middle East. Phil Saunders, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Really happy to be here. Great to meet you.
So you have an idea for solving the conflict amongst the Israelis and Palestinians. It's based on the Swiss cantons, which I confess I know very little about. So why don't you, before I can give any feedback on it, tell us what your plan consists of? I may interrupt just because I think maybe I'm getting too far ahead, so I want to ask a question. But other than that, the floor is yours.
Sure. Feel free to interrupt anytime. Okay, so I've lived in this area for just more than 10 years, and it's been very interesting living right on the Green Line. Just west of it, so I am inside Israel. I'm not a settler, but literally at the bottom of the hill is a Palestinian village, and on the next hill behind it, just a little further to the east, is a large Israeli settlement. And so we have various different communities in this area. And what's been fascinating to see is that when you choose to engage with each other in a positive way, it turns out that because we're all so different, we have different things to offer each other. And when I say that we're all different, it's not just two peoples here, the Israelis and the Palestinians. The settlement just a mile away to the east here, um, they are ultra Orthodox religious Jews. And whereas I am a secular Jew, my town is a very modern Israeli town, whereas theirs is a very traditional Israeli town. And in some ways, the Palestinian towns in this area can understand the traditions of that Israeli town. It's a city named Beitar Elite better than I can. And so, what's very interesting is that different kinds of identities end up creating opportunities to engage with each other in different ways, and you create some kind of symbiosis. And what I've also seen is when you just have two kinds of people, you often end up in a tug of war. Whereas the minute you've got three or more, interesting, more complex dynamics start to happen, which open up all kinds of opportunities. And so that's what we've taken advantage of in this area. The fact that we've got so many different kinds of people, and it works, and that's made us start to believe, hey, maybe this is the recipe for the whole land. We've got it working in a little microcosm. It's like a proof of concept, and you mentioned the Swiss cantonal system. We see that, yeah, they had something similar uh, already hundreds of years ago, that they had to deal with the fact that they had French speakers and German speakers and Italian speakers and some Romanish speakers, whoever they are. Okay, and they had Protestants and Catholics at a time in European history when Protestants and Catholics were killing each other over those differences. And Switzerland managed to find a way of just saying there's a place for everybody in our country, and we don't have to fight each other. And that's the inspiration. So we are looking to open up discussions on that possibility.
So you mentioned that there were different ethnicities living in Switzerland. But did
Yep.
any of these ethnicities believe that the entire land belonged to them and they didn't want any other ethnicities there? Because Hamas, Islamic Jihad, neighboring Hezbollah, they in Iran, outside of even the immediate area, they don't want a Jewish state. So it's not a matter of they just want a little piece of land where they can live on and be peaceful. They want the Jews gone. So I'm not sure how analogous the current state of Israel is compared to that.
Yep. Very fair comment. So, as you say, this is the Holy Land, okay, and we have some rather special issues here that maybe aren't analogous to anywhere else in the world. And I would agree with you that whereas in Switzerland it was a juncture of different nationalities, that each of them have their own country as well. There is France, there is Germany, there is Italy, and Switzerland happened to be this sort of interesting place at where they all meet. And so, nevertheless, they created a mechanism for handling different kinds of identities that were very important and still are to this day to the people in Switzerland. And in the same way, Belgium is another example where they have French speakers and Dutch speakers. Effectively, it's Flemish, but it's the same language more or less. And they're Belgium is at the juncture of France and the Netherlands. So here, yes, you are absolutely right. First of all, we have a rather maybe unique situation where we have two peoples who love exactly the same land. That's both the Jewish people and the Palestinian people feel fundamentally, culturally, that we grew up in this land and we're not satisfied with just part of it. And that's why the two-state solution hasn't satisfied either people. It could have maybe been done, but it would never have given either people what they wanted. The Palestinians, for example, they love Jaffa and Haifa and Akko. These are cities on the west coast of Israel by the Mediterranean Sea. And under the two-state solution, they wouldn't have access to those lands unless the borders were kept open. And in the same way, for the Jewish people, we care deeply about places like Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac and Jacob are all buried. These are our biblical ancestors. And Joseph is buried in Nablus, at least according to our tradition. And both of those cities, Hebron and Nablus, are deep in the West Bank. And so if we were only to get Israel without the West Bank, we're not getting all these places that we really care about. So the question comes, is it possible to share this land that both peoples love so dearly and yet not lose our separate identities? Because we do not want to blend with each other. We do not want to become a one size, one nation. We aren't. And so we have to preserve our identities. And what we've seen in this area is actually preserving those identities is a recipe for win-win symbiosis. We shouldn't have to blend away our identities and all become one, but that we shouldn't also have to separate away from each other in order to preserve those identities. Federalism is the whole idea of living in one land together, but creating areas where those different identities can be preserved. So you're right, it's not directly analogous, but it's the best that we can see out there.
So about, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago, I remember watching the town hall, and it was a panel discussion, and the only two people I remember were Shimon Peres and Saeed Erekat. And Shimon Peres said, "Look, you were offered. Yeah, I know the numbers are disputed up and down, but he said at Camp David you were offered 98% of the West Bank or whatever the number was, and virtually everything you wanted, and Arafat turned it down. Erekat says, I'll take the deal right now. Give it to me right now, and I'll take it. And Shimon Peres says no. And Shimon Peres, he first of all, he wasn't in the position to make the offer right then and there, anyways. But he said, look, when I was prime minister, I went out on a ledge to make peace. And it came back and bit me in the ass because of the terrorists, because of Arafat.
Yep. Mhm.
He said, basically, I'm sick of that. And I just wonder, especially after October 7th, with the Israeli concern for security, how does this render them secure from another October 7th?
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, there have been many missed opportunities across the history of this land, including many in recent decades. And part of me believes it didn't happen because, as I said, neither people actually were satisfied with that splitting the land up, no matter how much percentage or whatever. Both peoples actually love the whole land. Now, however, if we were going to live in this land together, then you're absolutely right. Then how are we going to have security? Because, and you're absolutely right that right now, following October 7th, there's a lot of fear from both peoples of each other, even more than there ever was. So what do you do? However, okay, even if we are very afraid of each other, the fact is we do not want to disengage from each other for all kinds of reasons that I see on a daily basis here. The fact we've been in this war for more than a year, and in this area, we are working together to make sure the war doesn't come here because we don't want anyone driving a wedge between us and ruining the economic relations that we've built where we are interdependent. Okay, we are basically living hand in glove with each other, and the benefits are huge. So the question is, how do you preserve the benefits, such as economic interconnections and freedom of movement throughout this land, and yet not lay yourself open to terrorism and whatever? The answer, as far as I'm concerned, from what we've learned in this area, is you can't just do economics and trust that everybody's going to love that and become part of it. There are some people out there with other agendas, and you cannot lay ourselves open to them coming and spoiling the party. So what we've pioneered here is it very robust economics and security because they have to go hand in hand. And if you get enough people on board with this, that everybody has a lot to lose for things going wrong, then the ones with the bad agendas are significantly reduced in their capability to influence things, and you can even treat them as outside criminal spoilers, and every country has to be able to handle some people who would like to upset the apple cart. But the important thing is to create something, a setup that gives the vast majority of the people what they need. And the last thing I'll say is, in my experience, traveling around throughout this land, despite what you might see, obviously the media is going to show you all the flashpoints and all the violence and whatever. The vast majority of people are actually normal human beings who just want to be able to live their lives in their towns or wherever, and be able to go to work and have their kids go to school and whatever, and not have anyone interfering. That's what human beings, for the most part, want.
You just said something that's very interesting to me. I've had debates on the subject, and I'm somewhat pro-Israeli. Not to the extent that I think that the United States should be giving them foreign aid or sending troops over there, but I think that Israel has the moral superiority over Hamas. So I've had debates with very, very pro-Israeli people. In my position is they should defeat Hamas with as few civilian casualties as possible. And what I'm told is there are none or very few innocent Palestinians. But what you just said to me contradicts that claim. I mean, first of all, logic, just thinking about it, tells me that that's not true. That every Palestinian isn't some vicious murderer. But you live there, I don't, and you just said that you're interacting with them. So refute the position or confirm it about that all Palestinians are just terrorists who want to kill Jews.
Fine. So let me say, first of all, Hamas are a terrorist organization that have an awful agenda that is not in the interests of anyone with with the purpose of living a nice life. Hamas is not about that. and they have used the Gazan population as human shields and cannon fodder for their political interests. And Hamas has a political agenda. And let's not forget, they've been funded by Iran, and Iran has its political agenda in this region. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that there aren't people with horrible, negative agendas, and yeah, we shouldn't kid ourselves about them at all. You're absolutely right. For the sake of the Israelis and the Palestinian people, Hamas needs to be eradicated. Okay, or at the very least, totally sidelined so that they can no longer do anything that is going to wreck things, because that is exactly what they have done. In Gaza, it is destroyed. Okay, Hamas has not brought any positive result for any civilians in this land. And we have to make sure that cannot happen. And part of the tragedy is that when we pulled out of Gaza in 2005, I mean, the Israeli disengagement from Gaza, which included uh, all of our settlements, were erased. We lost the ability to even know what was going on in Gaza. And as a result, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, okay, were able to prepare all kinds of things. And then, unfortunately, it happened on October the 7th. We cannot allow that. We must be in this land, aware of everything that's going on in this land, because otherwise people can plot very bad things. So those are the terror organizations. I'm not suggesting we should strike a deal with them at all. Okay. However, the people, I can tell you with tons of experience, the people are people. They are not all in bed with these ideologies at all. And I can tell you, the Palestinians have never been very impressed with their leaders. The Palestinian Authority has never been very popular either. And so the last time that there was an election, the Palestinians felt, we've had enough of the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. All the money flows into Ramallah and stays in Ramallah, and the people don't get anything. Hey, maybe a religious party would be more principled and whatever. So a bunch of them voted for Hamas. It was a vote for change. They did, and by the way, the Palestinians are always looking for change. They are not happy with the state of life that they have at the moment. So they are open to all kinds of possibilities. So when I talk about these kinds of ideas that I and my partners have, they're well up for it. They are really keen and ready to try anything. What they say to me is, one state, two states, 10 states, we don't care. As long as we can put food on the table for our families and live in our towns in dignity, we don't know nothing about politics or whatever. Just please find us something that will. And most of the Israelis are like that too. They're not experts on politics and whatever. So someone's got to start coming up with some new ideas for the
Now,
sake of the people.
with current Israeli leadership, namely Benjamin Netanyahu, it's been claimed, and I don't know, I've seen contradictory accounts, that he was part of a plan to keep Hamas in power so as to divide the West Bank from Gaza. First of all, is there any truth to that? Do you know about that? And secondly, is he the right leader to be in charge to implement the kind of system that you're talking about?
Well, okay. So I am an expert of what I've experienced in this area. Okay, I am not an expert on Israeli politics. Okay,
Fair enough.
however, yes, I have heard plenty of evidence that suggests that Israeli strategy, including Netanyahu's strategy, was a divide and conquer approach. It suited them to have the Palestinians not unified. And so, wonderful. The Palestinian Authority was in charge in the West Bank, and Hamas were in charge in Gaza. And their idea was to play them off against each other. And for years, I think it worked, but it's really blown up in our faces. Um, it's time to recognize that the old games and containment The idea was that we could contain the Gaza problem. Well, that was very short-sighted, and it's really, really hurt us incredibly badly. And so, yes, of course, we are responding very heavily, and there are going to be big changes. And this is an opportunity to try something different. Now, is Netanyahu and his coalition the best ones to lead that? I don't know at the moment. They are busy dealing with the war at this point in time. Not a lot of people are really thinking about the day after, but we are. Okay, we have not given up at all on the idea that Israelis and Palestinians can get along. And just last night, it's Ramadan at the moment, the holy fasting month for Muslims. We had a gathering just 2 miles from here at a restaurant which is really at the juncture of all of our communities. And we had more than 40 people there breaking fast together, Israelis and Palestinians and some internationals. And we had a fantastic time. So even in the midst of all of everything that's going on, okay, we are still standing strong together, and we are benefiting from the fact that the war has not come here, and we don't want it.
So, what you're advocating is a one state solution. Presumably, it would be a democratic state. What about the Israeli fears of demographic overwhelming?
Totally.
In other words,
Absolutely.
if everybody's able to vote, what is to stop the Jews from just being overwhelmed?
Right? Absolutely. So, I don't know if you saw that I sort of choked a little bit on the word one state. Okay.
Yeah, I
For
did. I
me,
noticed it.
federalism is in between one state and two states. Two states, in the most extreme case, is you cut the land up and create two totally separate states with a big wall between. And by the way, I fear that if we were to ever set up two states peaceably, again, with not a big wall between them, the spoilers might well do something, okay, the ones who don't want peace, and they might do some horrible thing. And then I just know that one side or the other say, I can't believe we even thought we could get along, whatever, build that damn wall and let's separate and never see each other again. And I think that would be a tragedy. So I don't want the two-state separation model. Okay, and my partners. Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of many of us who've gathered together to create a project called the Federal Forum, based on principles that we do not want to disengage from each other. That it's too much of a lose-lose. But we also do not want to merge with each other. So a one-state solution where we became one people and we have one government and we all vote together, that's not going to work for us either. Okay. We do not want to lose our self-governance, our self-determination. We've been fighting for it. Well, in the Jewish case, we say we've been fighting for thousands of years. The Palestinians, it's been not as long as that, but nevertheless, quite a while that they've had a national movement fighting for their right of self-governance, and they don't want to give it up either. So we can't have a one state where we would all do decisions together, because then there would be massive infighting, and exactly as you say, the demographics would be defining which is the dominant party. We don't want that. So federalism is the idea of living in one land but having autonomous self-governance for at least the two peoples. But actually it's more than that, because before this war started in October the 7th, Israel was going through a huge crisis, which was tending towards a civil war. There were the religious Israelis that were wanting Israel to move towards a much more religious based state. And there were the seculars saying, no, 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 we don't want to lose our secular rights. And there was serious talk about divorcing from Tel Aviv is the classic secular city, and yeah, they sometimes talk about we should be our own state. Now again, we shouldn't be divorcing, but we should be retaining our separate self governance. Okay, and that is the idea of federalism. It's not one state, it's not two states. It's the best of both.
So I'm assuming, and if I'm wrong, let me know, that you don't believe this could be implemented until this war has had a resolution. Is that
Yeah.
accurate? Okay.
I think you can safely say that right now, yeah, there are things happening that it's going to be very hard to create a whole new governance system to chart a way out of this. And even when this war ends, and it will end. We've had a lot of wars. I've lived in this country for just over 20 years, and I've seen a lot of wars come and go, but they all do go in the end. There will be an opportunity for us to look at new ideas, and yeah, it won't be implemented overnight. There are changes that would need to be tried in the same way that we've been pioneering a test, a proof of concept here. In the same way, Israel, for example, can on its own decide to become less centralized. Israel is a very centralized country. Supposedly, out of the OECD countries, we are the one with the most centralized governance system. Effectively, Jerusalem determines what happens in all of the rest of the country. But there are plenty of places that don't actually like that. They feel like, hey, okay, in Haifa, far away from Jerusalem, they feel like, we know what we need far more than people in Jerusalem. We should be deciding what we want. So there are many ways to move things in the right direction by trying things out and experiencing the benefits. And so federalism is about decentralization, more autonomy for different regions, different identities. And we've seen in this area that it really works. So, hey, let's give it a go. But it's not going to be overnight, it's going to be a process.
Well, you've been at this for a while now, and you live in
Yeah.
the area and you talk to a variety of people.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite for the type of changes that you'd like to see implemented? I don't mean a
Okay.
majority. I don't think a majority right now would, but is there some grassroots support that you could count on and help to develop and grow?
Yeah. So, okay, I already said on the Palestinian side, they are really keen for something new. Okay, so they are well up for it, whatever it would be. Okay, but I'm not saying they are all converted to the federal idea. There are a lot of people who don't even understand what federalism is. Okay, and on the Israeli side as well. Okay, totally. Okay, but they are ripe for new ideas. Now, on the Israeli side, I would say that until October the 7th, most Israelis were pretty happy with the status quo. There was a feeling that, hey, the Abraham Accords was happening, we're normalizing with the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco without even needing to deal with the Palestinian issue. And our economy was thriving, and we have a thriving high tech and all sorts of. Everybody was feeling, hey, everything's great. Therefore, on the Israeli side, there was not much interest in thinking of new ways. This war has really, really changed things to the point that, yeah, we're suffering now. And I was taught in conflict resolution that you don't get a resolution to a conflict until you have some kind of mutually hurting stalemate. And the reality was the Palestinians were certainly hurting, but the Israelis weren't for a very long time. But now, yeah, Israelis are hurting too. So that means, for all the worst reasons, that now, yeah, we're all suffering, which means there is a possibility to start talking about some new ideas because the old ways haven't worked out well for anyone. We really are not in a good place at this point in time. But yeah, it's going to take a process to get people to start thinking about new ideas. But I think we can definitely be inspired by the fact that when you talk about federalism, it's not just Switzerland. Most of the most successful countries in the world are, are federal systems of some kind. The USA is a federation of 50 states. Canada has its however many provinces. And Australia has, I think it's 6 states and a couple of territories, and there are Muslim uh, federal systems as well. Malaysia has federal areas. The UAE is a federation of 7 states. There are many examples. Germany is the Federal Republic of Germany. Um, so there are lots, and I already mentioned Switzerland, Belgium, etc. So we can take some inspiration.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know enough about the issue or the area to know if it's a really good idea, but I will tell you this. It certainly sounds interesting. It sounds promising. And the fact that you live in the area and believe it could work lends credibility to it. Before I let you go, is there anything you think needs to be covered that we haven't addressed?
Okay, so maybe the only thing I should add is, yeah, I get to experience it on a day-to-day basis, some kind of, yeah, clearly, it's not federalism yet. Okay, it is local communities managing to retain their identity, but we need a proper system. Now, in terms of creating such a structure, I'm not an expert on that, but the whole point of the Federal Forum was to gather together a group of individuals who are experts on it and have been working on these ideas for, in some cases, decades. The idea of a federal solution to this conflict is actually not that new. Okay. In 1947, when the partition plan was decided upon by UNSCOP, was the UN committee, whatever it stood for. Okay, and there were only, I believe, 12 voting countries at that time, and I think maybe 7 of them voted for the partition plan. So that's what was implemented. But I believe there was an alternative option on the table, a federal solution, even back then, and 3 countries voted for it. But for whatever reason, okay, that didn't get enough support at that time. Now, these ideas have been thought about for a long time, and there are people who've been working out the details of how it would work. And so the whole point of creating the Federal Forum was to gather them all together because we feel the time has come for new ideas to get out there. And if we want that to happen, we have to start working together to really develop these ideas and start putting these ideas out there to the world. Most of the world is still committed to the two-state solution, but it becomes less and less feasible with every year because there are more Israelis living in the West Bank every year, for example. The idea that they're all going to be evacuated the way it happened in Gaza, I think it's a non-starter. Okay, it was in Gaza there were only a few thousand of them, and it was incredibly painful, and the results have not been good. So I just cannot see that there's any possibility that that's going to happen. Therefore, we're going to have to think of some new ideas. And yeah, we have gathered together many experts, and they all have their individual ideas. There's the Federation movement, and the Abrahamic movement, and Eretz Hard, and the Holy Land confederation ideas as well. Okay, there's all kinds of possibilities, and we need to think about exactly what would work for us. And so that's where we're at this stage.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming here and explaining it to us. Where can people find you? Where can they find your work?
Okay, so if you want to read about the Federal Forum Project, it is a project under the organization Challenge. Challenge is an organization for conflict transformation. Here's the mug, and I'm the chairman of Challenge. And so we brought together various projects, including the grassroots coexistence building, for example, in this area, but also the top-down systemic structural changes that we believe are going to be needed, and many other ideas. So it's all under their website is challenge.org.il. So by all means, you can find us there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Okay. Looking forward to speaking again another time when hopefully things will
Oh,
have moved
sure,
forward. Okay.
sure.
Thank you so
For,
much.
thank you. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Leibowitz. Till next time.